Everyone, and thank you for joining us for our live online voter education training. And we're so honored to have our guest presenter, Ms. Nina Altschiller, the president of the League of Women Voters. All right, take it away.
Okay, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. For those of you who don't know about the League, we have been empowering voters for over a century. We're a nonpartisan grassroots organization working to protect and expand voting rights and ensure everyone is represented in our democracy. We have been empowering voters through advocacy, education, and litigation at the local, state, and national level for over 101 years now. That's some of us long ago and far away. Sometimes I think we seem like we're still there. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. There are over 1,000 state and local leagues. We reach over 10 million voters in 2020. We've sent hundreds of thousands of letters to Congress, and we have nearly 500,000 members and supporters. The philosophy of working with everybody and not demonizing anybody is very unique to the League. We are issues-based and do not endorse candidates. We have a legislative agenda, but that is focused almost entirely on voting rights and not backing one party over another, though sometimes it seems that way these days. We do voter engagement with high schools and colleges registering voters. I think we registered about 150 at Savannah State University and Savannah Tech this spring. We work up and down the coast with like-minded organizations like Black Voters Matters, the NAACP, This Is What Voting Looks Like, Pastor Alliances, et cetera, et cetera. We're looking for common sense voting reform. It seems as though that's going to have to happen through our partnerships with the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center, since very restrictive voting, anti-voting rights legislation has been passed in many states, including Georgia. And then we do a lot of get out the vote. I don't know if you all have been out and about at all, but if you have, you might have seen those great big ground level billboards that say vote and tell everybody where to go for early voting. No state has done more than Georgia in recent years to make voting difficult, especially for minorities. When one party controls the legislature, the party will seek to abridge the way people vote, either by implementing impediments like taking away drop boxes, or by redrawing districts as they did here. And sometimes that results in ballots that are incorrect, as 3 are in Chatham County. They're working to change that right now. But people who have gotten absentee ballots may have gotten the wrong ballot. SB 202, which is a Senate bill, made voting absentee much more difficult, especially for the disabled and the elderly, because of drop box removal and putting more restrictions on the length of time you can request an absentee ballot and how frequently you have to request an absentee ballot. So we have joined with the Southern Poverty Law Center and the ACLU to sue the state of Georgia to overturn that restrictive voting legislation.
Hello, Calvin Tinley checking in.
Glad you're with us, Calvin.
Okay.
Chatham County has over 229,000 registered voters, which is about 80% of the voting age population. That's really high. In 2020, about 70% of those registered voters voted. In 2022, we now have about 79% of registered voters, of eligible voters registered. And in part, that's because of what they did with the new motor, when you apply for driver's license, you used to just automatically be registered to vote. Now you have to opt in. That they said was a glitch in the system, and it has been corrected, but it was in place for over a year. And Chatham, they're checking into it now, but they think something like 20,000 registered voters weren't registered. And they won't automatically be registered. People will have to, which is one of the reasons why we recommend that people go onto this Secretary of State's website and check to see whether or not you are registered to vote. Many people have been removed from the rolls for inactivity. You have to vote at least once in 5 years, and if you haven't voted, you can be removed, or you may have moved and your new registration wasn't logged. We have several board members actually that happen to, and clearly if you're with the League of Women Voters, you always vote, and they went on and checked to see them, they weren't there any longer. So it's very important to do that. And if you think your vote doesn't count, we had several races in Chatham County that were won by fewer than 100 votes and won by only 13 votes. So to say that every vote doesn't count is not the case. Certainly 2020 proved that one. Let's see. Their early voting has already begun, and it runs until May 20th. There are 2 Saturdays, the 7th and the 14th, and 1 Sunday, which is May 15th. There are 5 locations where you can vote in person. The Board of Election at 1177 Eisenhower Drive, the Civic Center, which is on Oglethorpe Street downtown, Mosquito Control, Islands Library, and Southwest Library. I'm going to have addresses for those a little later in the presentation. And this presentation will be available if anybody would like it. I can send it. I can send it to you, and you can get it on, Denise. Thank you. Okay. And voting hours are 9 to 5, except on Eisenhower, where they're 8 to 6. And that includes Saturday. Saturday is at Eisenhower and the Civic Center, and Sunday at Eisenhower only. Any eligible registered voter who wishes to vote absentee may do so, and this is particularly applicable to those of you who are disabled or who have disabled populations that you work with. Since the beginning of pandemic, absentee ballots were automatically sent to everybody, and then certainly sent to anyone over 65 or anyone who was just disabled. Senate Bill 202 changed that. You now need to apply for an absentee ballot for every election cycle. If you are disabled or over 65, you can check the box for an election cycle so that you will get it for the primary if there's a runoff, for the general election, and again, if there's a runoff. But then every new election cycle requires a new application for an absentee ballot. So you can check to confirm you're registered at mvp.sos.ga.gov, and then you must fill out and submit an official ballot request form. You can actually call, if you don't have a computer or access to a computer, you can call the Board of Registrars at 912-7, as it says on the screen, 790-1520. And again, this presentation will be available, or you can download the application. And as I said, you have to fill it out for every election cycle. I can't say that often enough, because that's something that most people are not aware of. Your ballot application may be submitted up to 10 weeks prior. So obviously it's too late to do that. Well, May 13th is actually the deadline, but I would not recommend doing it this close to the election, because I doubt seriously it would get to Jacksonville, back to Savannah, and then have time for you to fill it out, get it to Jacksonville and back to Savannah, because that's the way the post office work. If at all possible for the primary, you would need to go, I think you would need to go in person. For those of you who have, who are thinking about the future for the November election. That means you need to submit an application by beginning on August 29th, and then it must be received at least 11 days prior to Election Day. As I said, because of the nature of USPS and not having a sorting center in Savannah, all mail goes to Jacksonville before it goes on to where its final destination. And you can mail your application to the Board of Elections, and the information is here, or you can, if you have a smartphone, you can take a photograph of it and then email it to absenteeballots@chathamcounty.org, or fax it if you know somebody who has a fax machine. It's almost like having a CD player or even a tape deck. Or you can take it in person to the registration office. But if you're going to go in person, my suggestion is to go in person to vote. They have made that not so easy. If you have submitted an application and you haven't received your ballot, it sometimes takes 10, 15 days, but you can go on to my voter page at the Secretary of State's office and find and log in. It's just your first initial, your last name, your date of birth, and the zip code where you live. And it will show you where everything is in process. It'll show you actually the last time you voted, and whether you're registered, and if you've submitted an application, where it stands, whether it's been mailed to you or it's been received. And if you're nervous like I am, I'm always checking these things to make sure they have it and it's been processed, and it will show when it's been mailed back to you. And here's a step-by-step on filling out an absentee ballot. It's complicated. It comes in a package, and the first thing that they recommend that you do is that you pull out the instructions page and read it very carefully before you do, and put the ballot to one side and the envelope to another, and read the instructions very carefully the first time. And this gives you an example of what those instructions look like. It's very comprehensive, actually, and they've done the thing I'm going to say, and I chide the legislature for making voting difficult, but the Secretary of State's office and the local board of registrars and board of election work really hard. They are nonpartisan employees, and they work really hard to at least follow the letter of the law that they're required to follow, but to give as much instruction to you as the voter on how you go about doing this. So the instructions are very clear, and very comprehensive. So this is the, and it, as I say, it's very clear. Things that are circled in red are things that you really have to be very careful. If you make a mistake, or change your mind, you have to write spoiled, and then you have to contact the registrar's office to get a new ballot. There are no changes allowed. The correct way, you need to use black or blue ink only. You can't use a Sharpie because it bleeds through, and you can't use a pencil because it won't scan. All of these ballots. And I actually did during the 2020 election, because we had so many absentee ballots. They had a whole lot of poll workers who scanned the ballots and sorted the ballots, and pencil doesn't work. So it needs to be very carefully done. And then the ballot has to be enclosed in an envelope, and it's a secrecy envelope, so you're required to put your ID on it, but it closes if there's a flap that seals it, so you haven't. So none of your identification is to be seen by anybody. And this is what it looks like. You have to fill out. You have to sign an oath that you swear you are who you are, and then you sign with your usual signature, and that's very important. It's the signature you used when you registered to vote, or the signature that's on your driver's license if you were automatically registered with your driver's license. And then you print your name on the envelope, just like it looks on the outside of the envelope you received. You fill in your birth date, and then you put your driver's license or state identification. If you do not have a driver's license or a state ID, you can use the last 4 digits of your social security number. And that's also important to know, that you don't have to have a driver's license or a state ID. If you don't have either of those things, it gets more complicated. Then you have to scan and photograph and submit. And it's much easier to do that in person, I would tell you. And then this is if you needed assistance, and this could very easily be the case. If you need assistance, then it has to be checked. And then the signature of the person who assisted you has to be there, and the printed name, so that they can go back and ask questions if anyone decides to challenge a ballot. And so then you put all of this in the envelope, and you make sure you go through the checklist, that you read and signed it, and that you put your birth date in, and that everything is as it should be. Fold it, put it in the envelope, and then you can choose to drop it in one of the 3 drop boxes. There were 11, now there are 3, and they're inside where they were outside and accessible 24/7. They are now inside early voting places. So honestly, if you are going already to the early voting place, you don't need a drop box. You can hand it to an employee, or you could vote in person if you are there. If you put a stamp on it, you can put it in a mailbox or hand it to your mailman. And I have tried very hard to get a piece of legislation introduced federally or at the state level that would make all absentee ballots postage paid, so that your closest drop box would be your mailbox or your mailman. But that said, they did not agree to do that. It does take only 1 stamp. And there are the 3 drop boxes are at the Board of Registrar's office, Mosquito Control, which is on 65 Billy Hare Drive, or Islands Library, which is on Johnny Mercer Boulevard. But again, if you're going there, those are early voting places, so you might as well just vote in person. And again, you can check to see where it is in the process by going to My Voter page. And as soon as you get your ballot, fill it out and mail it, because if you wait too long, who knows? It has to be there by 7 o'clock on election day, not the day after. And so some frequently asked questions. You don't need a stamp if you use a drop box. You need 1 first-class stamp if you mail it in a USPS mailbox. And if you have moved after submitting your ballot request, your ballot will not be forwarded. The answer to that question is no. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Yes, Calvin Tinley.
Yes.
I'm a disabled person, meaning visually impaired. And I
Yes.
took advantage of the early voting process on Monday the 2nd.
Yes.
And it's a choice, but if it were me, like I'm always doing, it would be easier to go out and do it in person, because you won't have to worry about it getting lost.
That's correct.
We'll
I
assist you.
agree with you.
That's about it. They work pretty good. I mean, the automated visual impairment ballots are just that easy. It's just that easy.
That's right. The hard work is figuring out who you're going to vote for. And there are a lot of candidates on each of those ballots, a whole lot of candidates. So
Yes.
I do recommend that people go, if you haven't been able to read up on the candidates, if you go to Ballotpedia, and that's Ballot, BALLOTPEDIA.org, and put in your zip code, it'll show you every candidate that will be on your ballot, and you can read up about all of them. There are a lot of candidates and running for everything. Any other questions?
you can also use the website on georgia.gov to find the candidates.
That's true too, absolutely. It's the SOS, that then my voter page will give you all kinds of information. It doesn't give you all of the biography and links to the candidate websites that Ballotpedia does, but the Secretary of State's website is very comprehensive.
You can also get a ballot from DFAX. If you know their 888-421-3281 number, I think there's another number, 877-423-4746. They will send you a ballot as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. Thank you very much.
DFAX. Yes.
They can't send you a ballot though, and that's
application. Excuse me.
an application.
An application.
Absolutely. They can send you an application.
Yes, an application.
Right. That's great. And actually, if you have a friend who they can print out an application for you also.
Right.
But it is complicated if you don't have a printer. And calling the Board of Registrars, they're very responsible and responsive. They will send you an application. And they're nice ladies up there. Well, it was nice meeting everybody.
Yes.
Where would you recommend going to read up on all of the changes to the Georgia voting laws and the implications of the changes?
I'm sorry, if you could repeat that, I had a little trouble hearing you.
Where would you recommend going to find out about all of the changes that's occurred with the new Georgia voting laws?
I would Google SB 202 implications. There's a lot of misinformation about it, and there was a lot of brouhaha about the line warming, which means, you know, giving people food and water in line. And the thing I think that was the impediments to absentee ballots were probably the most restrictive. The line warming it was a red herring to get everybody off of the fact that they were turning things over to the legislature rather than the state and the Secretary of State, and the fact that they've given the Georgia Bureau of Investigation an arm which they have funded to have special officers looking into voter fraud. Even though it was, you know, all of the lawsuits and everything showed completely that there was absolutely zero voter fraud in Georgia. So, yeah. But there's a lot of information on the web about what all the implications are. If you had a specific question, I could probably answer it. But the absentee voting is that, and the drop boxes. I mean, and the League of Women Voters, we brought it on ourselves, I suppose, because we raised the money and then we donated the boxes to Chatham County. And they just decided, even though mailboxes don't have video cameras and are open 24/7, they decided the drop boxes were not be safe. That's sort of incomprehensible to me, but those extra drop boxes did not go to waste, though. They donated them to other counties that did not have them. So that at least was something.
Okay, are there any other questions? Anybody else?
And I am happy at any time to have somebody call me or email me. My personal email address is actually nina.a@, League of Women Voters, coastalgeorgia.org instead of info, though that gets to me too. And and what we are working, the League is going to be working with Common Cause, the Savannah Tribune, and the Philip Randolph Institute to help people to do self-help centers for filling out absentee ballots. And as soon as we get those up and running, we'll notify, we'll do some publicity about it as to where they will be. I know one of the centers will be at the Savannah Tribune offices.
Okay. I know we've had some new people to join in, so the floor is open for anyone that has any other questions.
I have a question, Calvin Tinley. Which would be the best avenue to vote if you were physically impaired or visually impaired, as opposed to absentee ballot? Because I don't trust them. I really don't.
Right, I can see where you're coming from on that. They seem fraught. I would say Eisenhower would be, the voter registration office would be where the parking is easiest and
Right. That's where I went. That's where I went.
Civic Center is ground level, and there's if it's anyone's in a wheelchair, the parking is free there also, and there's no wait there. And actually, the libraries are accessible, and all of the voting machines have visually impaired adaptability. Did you find that to be the case, that you were able to?
Yes.
Yeah.
When I went there on the second, they opened at 8, and I was not the first person because they had a line, but the visual impairment ballot is what they call it.
Yes.
And then the automated, it's just a little remote control, up, down arrow, X, left, right arrow. And then the controls were very easy. You just have to listen. You just have to listen.
Well, that's true. And if you're hearing impaired, they're
Right.
poll workers are able to guide you through the ballot.
That's why I would prefer the Board of Elections at 1117, because they have the staff there that know what to do.
Well, they're staffed at all of them, and they're
okay. I didn't know that.
They're very well staffed at all of them. And election day won't be crowded because so many people are voting early. We've had
Yes, they did.
record turnout so far in Georgia for early voting.
Well, that's good to know. It's good to know that people aren't being discouraged by the new laws, because yeah.
I know, but the people who work at the polls, the people who work for the Board of Elections and the Board of Registrars, they really care about voting. They want you to vote. I was suspicious, as you know what, going into 2020, but I have to tell you, having worked as a poll worker, it's the longest day in history, but it is also one of the most rewarding. It's a terrific experience.
Are you able to take someone with you if you have a physical disability?
Yes, you
go
are.
help you?
Yes.
You are?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely. And I encourage that you do that. But if you don't have somebody with you, they have people who will help you there.
Okay.
That was one of my best experiences. We did the trolley in 2020, and I had a gentleman who was visually impaired, and I took him in, and I got to vote. It's like I got to vote again. It was a wonderful experience to be with him and to see how he felt about being able to cast a ballot. And he didn't think he was going to be able to. It was great.
And can the person that you take with you, can they vote at that time too? Or is that like cheating because they need to go and wait their turn because they don't have a disability?
Oh, you cut in line. If you're disabled, you go to the head of the line.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 75 or older or disabled, you go to the head of the line.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm asking, is the person who is with you, are they able to vote at that time, or do they need to come back and do their vote later?
If it's their polling place, they can vote at that time, but not obviously at the same time as you.
Okay.
They help you, and then they'd have to get in line too.
Yeah, to do their own. Okay.
But I do have to say, election day, there are no lines on election day, or except if you go when the polls open. Other than that, there are no lines.
And they were very sanitary, ma'am. They were
Nope.
wiping the clipboards and the pens off. They have people that were there to do just that,
Yep,
to
they're very careful.
sanitize the pens and the clipboards, and they were putting them in a box. And then I think it was a couple of ladies that was just desanitizing all the touched pens and clipboards that they
Right.
received.
That's
It's not about, unclean. They're very clean.
absolutely. We're totally vigilant about it. My hands hurt by the end of the day. But it's true, and there's a lot of COVID out there right now. So everybody, please be very careful. Even if you've been vaccinated and boosted, I know I have a very good friend who's in the hospital right now. It's scary. It must be a new variant. So be careful.
They're using numbers. I think it's AB something nothing, but it's a new variant. Yes, ma'am. I heard it the news on this morning.
Yep.
This morning.
And it's contagious. But if you've been vaccinated, it's not, unless you're, immunocompromised, it's probably not going to make you terribly sick, except in the rare instance, like my friend who's in the hospital.
I think the CDC was talking about Bryan County. I don't remember all the counties, but they were letting us an alert in the area of Bryan County, I think Liberty County, and there was about 2 or 3 more in this area.
Wow.
That were on alert for increase of COVID symptoms or patients.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's good to know.
Mm.
We've gotten a little lazy about wearing masks, but I say take that precaution, wear a mask, and you'll be much safer.
Okay, are there any more questions?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Okay.
I did put some helpful links in there though, as we were talking. I've got Ballotpedia, the sos.ga.gov, georgia.gov, which is where you can register also, a link regarding the SB 202. It looked like a pretty good article. And Nina, if you could verify you had given your direct email address, and I want to make sure I have it right.
Oh, that's great. It's NINA and then A at lwvcga.org.
Okay, I think that looks right.
That's great. And here, let me give you my phone number too, because sometimes it's easier for people to call. It's
Okay, perfect.
917-656-9152.
Okay, and there is a question that showed up in the chat box from Heather. She asked, if you don't have a helper to read the ballot to you, will they have someone there to read it to you?
Yes, they will. Happily. And for those of you who haven't decided who you're going to vote for the Congressional District 1, U.S. Congress, the Democratic primary candidates are going to be on WJCL 22. Our forum, the League of Women Voters, is doing a forum tonight that begins at 6:30, and it will be on their website, and I guarantee you it will be entertaining, or at least informative. I have to say, the Senate District 2 was entertaining, and the school board was good too. And they're all on their website, past recordings.
So that's on WJCL's website. They have them archived.
Yes, they have them
Okay.
archived.
Perfect.
Correct. And yes, and this one will be running live, and it will also be archived.
Okay, well, if there aren't any more questions, we are so appreciative to you, Miss Nina, and we appreciate.
I enjoyed it. And would you like me to email you the presentation, or are you okay? You have enough of the links?
No, if you could, wonderful.
Okay, I will do that. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
All right. Have a great day.
Right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.